There's a strange chill that runs through you when you realize that some people don't just die, they're delivered to their end. Almost as if history itself decides enough is enough. And with Oskar Dirlewanger, you can feel that moment coming a long way off. The man walked through the war like a plague on two legs, leaving places behind him where silence seemed afraid to return. Yet his final days, that short, ugly stretch from June 1st to June 7th, 1945, carry a kind of grim poetry. As if the world, battered and exhausted, whispered, "Now it's your turn." Dirlewanger's capture on June 1st, 1945, didn't happen with any kind of cinematic flair. No last stand. No shootout. He didn't die leading a column of broken Waffen-SS remnants against the Red Army. Instead, he hid in plain sight, wearing civilian clothes, shuffling around Germany like an insignificant man nobody would bother remembering. Thing is, he expected this trick to work. A polished liar, a survivor of too many close calls, he thought slipping out of the collapsing Third Reich with a false name would be enough. And for a moment, it almost did. But there are some faces, some reputations, that burn themselves into people's memory. That's exactly what happened. A former Jewish concentration camp prisoner recognized him. Just like that. A tiny spark of recognition after years of horror. And that was it. Dirlewanger was arrested and handed over to Polish authorities. His past finally caught up, not with drama, but with a survivor's quiet, razor-sharp certainty. He was placed in a prison in Altshausen, guarded by Polish soldiers who had seen too much during the war to entertain any illusions about mercy. It's worth remembering, many of these men had lost entire families. Some had watched villages burn. Some had walked through the ruins left behind by Dirlewanger's own unit. So when he arrived, limping, pretending to be someone he wasn't, the guards didn't see a prisoner of war. They saw a monster they remembered from stories whispered by survivors. A name spoken with fear and hatred. Nights in this prison weren't quiet. According to Anton Fussing, a Luftwaffe officer who shared the cell, things happened after the lights went out. The guards came. They dragged Dirlewanger from his bunk. The beating started. Fussing later said, "I heard blows and terrible screams." That wasn't interrogation. It wasn't punishment. It was something raw, personal, and new, maybe inevitable. Each night followed the same grim pattern. Guards pulled him out into the corridor. The sound of boots scraping concrete. Fists, metal rods. The dull smack of a truncheon hitting flesh already swollen. The kind of sound that makes your stomach twist even if you can't see what's happening. By morning, he would be shoved back into the cell. Barely conscious, barely breathing. Fussing described his face as just wounds. Eyes swollen shut. Gashes that didn't have time to scab. Sheets sticking to blood. And still, somehow, Dirlewanger tried to stay alive. A man capable of unimaginable cruelty. Yet he clung to life like someone who thought he still deserved it. Strange, isn't it? Officially, the Allied forces didn't condone revenge killings. Officially, prisoners, even SS men, were supposed to be treated according to standard regulations. But paper is one thing. Reality in June 1945 was something else entirely. Especially when the prisoner in question had led a unit known for mass murder, torture, and atrocities so grotesque soldiers from the SS themselves had complained. The Polish guards didn't need orders. They needed closure. Maybe they didn't even plan his death at first. Maybe they just wanted him to feel something he made others feel. Pain, fear, helplessness. The things he dealt out like rations. But violence has momentum. And in that prison corridor, over several nights, it built until the line between punishment and execution simply dissolved. On June 7th, 1945, after nearly a week of continuous torture, the beatings reached their climax. Witnesses later described what happened as a kind of frenzy. Dirlewanger was dragged out again. He couldn't walk anymore, and the guards didn't bother holding back. No weapons that leave clean wounds. No rifles. No bullets. Just boots. Batons. Maybe the kind of improvised tools angry men pick up when anger becomes something heavier. Dirlewanger's ribs cracked. His skull fractured. Internal bleeding turned his body into something the human heart simply couldn't support anymore. He died there, not on a battlefield, not in a courtroom, but in a small, dim corridor that smelled of damp concrete and blood. He was 49 years old. Officially, the cause of death was listed as heart failure. Perhaps technically true, but the heart doesn't just stop for no reason. Something has to break it first. The body, the rumors, the exhumation. When word spread that Dirlewanger was dead, not everyone believed it. Men like him had a habit of slipping away, vanishing, reinventing themselves. War creates shadows deep enough for monsters to hide in, even after surrender. Rumors flared up. He escaped. He fled to Egypt. He joined the Egyptian army as an advisor. These stories stuck around surprisingly long. People didn't trust simple endings for complicated men. So in November 1960, 15 years after the war, authorities exhumed the remains buried in Altshausen. The bones were examined, measured, compared, and the conclusion was clear. They belonged to Oskar Dirlewanger. No escape, no reinvention, just a grave. No one was prosecuted for his death. No längs y heatings, no headloans. The Polish guards were never officially named. Maybe no one even tried to find them. The unspoken agreement between the prisoners, the guards, even the local administrators, was simple. Dirlewanger's death didn't require investigation. When justice systems break down, societies sometimes create their own forms of justice. Not legal, not clean, but human, in a dark way. It wasn't just the crimes, though God knows there were enough of them. It was the pattern. His entire life spiraled toward violence, toward pain, both giving and receiving. He lived in brutality. He rose through brutality. And in the end, brutality reclaimed him. He wasn't assassinated by a rival officer. He wasn't executed by the Allied command after a long trial. He died under the boots of men who represented everything he had tried to destroy. Almost symbolic, a reversal of roles he never imagined. Hard to say. Some historians believe he knew exactly why he was being beaten. Others think he remained delusional to the end, clinging to the fantasy that someone, Heinrich Himmler, Gottlieb Berger, whoever, might rescue him. But there's a moment in those 6 nights that must have pierced through even his warped psyche. A moment when the pain didn't stop. A moment when he realized no one was coming. A moment when the faces above him weren't terrified civilians anymore. They were soldiers, alive, unbroken, and full of rage he couldn't suppress. That realization, that must have been the true punishment. Dirlewanger didn't earn sympathy in life. He didn't get it in death. But his end raises uncomfortable questions, the kind history never fully answers. When a man commits atrocities beyond imagination, what does justice look like? A courtroom? A gallows? Or a dark corridor in a prison where justice becomes something deeply, painfully personal? Dirlewanger's death isn't just a historical footnote. It's a reflection of what happens when evil collapses under the weight of its own legacy. He died exactly the way he lived, violently, painfully, without dignity. And here's the thought that lingers long after the story ends. If someone like Dirlewanger existed again, would the world choose a different ending? Or would history repeat its brutal, primitive logic?